I love the Harry Potter movies, but specifically I really love the Dementors. How they look, the way they move, what they represent to J.K. Rowling. The whole story about Dementors, I really love them. So today I'm going to try to sculpt them. It's been about a full year since my last video, and a lot has changed over the last year in my life. And I'm planning to do a video soon that's just sort of a channel update and what I've been working on and what I'm planning to do in the future of the channel. But for now, for anyone new to my channel, what's up, dudes? In this video I'm going to show how to make Dementors or Wraiths or ghosts or shadows, any kind of cloaked, hooded creature that doesn't need a face. And we're going to do it all with just these two items from the Dollar Tree. I mean, a couple other items, but primarily just these two. Let's get into it. And I've been experimenting with it for years, making little skeletons and making all kinds of different things. It's much easier to show the articulations of fingers and bones. I've used it a few times to make sort of scattered terrain with a rib cage or like a pelvis bone or something like that. I've also done a fair bit of experimenting with making entire miniatures just from paper clips and tape, because those were the resources I had available to me when I was working in this one laboratory. But what I find it extremely useful for is for making hands, especially on large creatures that you want to have articulated fingers that are actually pretty durable. The floral wire that you can get at the dollar store I think is a really awesome and underutilized resource in this hobby. But sometime back in 2019, that's when I put the idea together that I can use floral tape and floral wires together to make these sort of cloaked creatures like this one. And close up you can kind of see that the details from the tape really help sell this as wrapped cloth. Like this would be especially good for a mummy, for instance. As usual, I'm going to start these miniatures off by using a paperclip to make the base of the armature, which with my technique is the head, the spine, and then the legs if there are any, but also the attachment point to the cork or whatever I'm using to hold on to it. And if anyone's interested in seeing kind of a slowed down, more up close version of how I make these armatures, you can check out the first video that I uploaded. That video is by far my most popular video and it gets the most views and subscribers, so it's interesting to me that a lot of the people that are here now might be people that were originally searching for that, or they found that as a suggested video a long time ago. But since that time, one of the important evolutions to my technique of making these armatures was starting to integrate this floral wire as the arms so that I can articulate the fingers like I mentioned before. And if you've been watching my videos, or you've seen the last two at least, then you've seen how integral that part of the armature can be in the later stages of this project, specifically using the thumb to be able to grasp onto items or weapons or any kind of object. And in this case, the way I accomplish having multiple fingers coming out of one wire is to have an S shape at the end of that wire, which is then twisted around and can be formed into ultimately 3 fingers. Then I just repeat that same thing with the other half of that long piece of wire, and I attach it by coiling it around the spine. And ultimately that method leaves you with 6 fingers, but it's always good to have an extra finger in this case because sometimes you bend one in the wrong way and it rips off, or it's just very easy to lose a finger by accident when you're working on this scale with this sort of material. Especially when you're bending it back and forth multiple times. So having an extra finger is fine because you can always just snip that off later, but in the meantime you can use it to add structural integrity to the hand. And with just a quick trim of those wires and shaping it, it looks like a really convincing skeletal hand. And then if at any point you end up having one too few fingers, you can always just coil another wire around, and it only bulks out the arm slightly to wrap it around, but it'll add some structural integrity, and then you got that extra finger. And if you're missing 2, then you can always just bend it in half and then twist both of those down the length of the wire if you need to, or do that little S folding method again. By the way guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. This is a really small channel and I would really love it to grow at some point so I can keep connecting with more people that find this sort of thing meaningful and interesting. So anybody that watches or shares it, or especially those of you who comment and directly engage with me, I really appreciate that, and it just really incentivizes me to do more of what I love. Like most people, I kind of find myself getting caught up more and more in this idea that the most productive use of my time is to work and earn money so that I have less anxiety about money. So it becomes really easy to talk myself out of doing something that I really love and am passionate about, but that doesn't earn me money. So that's why I appreciate it so much when the people in my life that I know personally, or the people that comment on my videos, try to encourage me to keep doing this thing that I love, because it really makes me happy and it really improves my mental health, and I'd like to do it as much as I can afford to do it. Alright, armature is done. I am very happy with how these came out. Dementors are apparently like 9 or 10 feet tall, so yeah, I compared them to some like HeroClix minis and some D&D humanoids, and I feel like I'm pretty close to that ratio. So I ended up making 5 armatures for these Dementors. I figured, I mean, it was possible 1 or 2 was gonna be kind of weird looking, or maybe it was the wire would break while I was making it, which is sometimes a risk, but honestly all 5 of these are good, and I like 5 as a number for an encounter, because I feel like a lot of D&D games I've played have been, you know, up to like 6 or 7 players, and you know, it's great if you have enough. I'd rather have too many Dementors than not enough when it comes to trying to populate some kind of cool encounter. There's one armature in particular that I'm really excited about. I'll try to get a close-up of this one. There we go. Like, he's got one hand actually on the ground, it'll be touching the base, and the other one kind of like reaching out. I'm really excited to get on to step 2. We are going to use some of this floral tape, and hard to tell if this is black or like very dark green, but ultimately it doesn't matter. I'm going to wrap these guys up, give them their base layer of their cloak. We're going to prime them, and then I think I'm going to attach some long flowy scraps of cotton probably. So yeah, this is going to be really cool. I'm pumped for the next step. Let's do it. This is post-production Andy doing a huge face palm because somehow I recorded this part but the microphone wasn't on or something, so I don't know. But yeah, it makes a really amusing sound when you pull on the tape. But basically what I'm trying to communicate at this point in the video was that what's interesting about the floral tape is that as you pull it, as you stretch it slightly, it becomes more sticky, which is really good for making these types of cloaks, because you can kind of touch it down and then, you know, stabilize it with one finger and then pull on it with the other hand and then wrap it. And as you wrap it, it kind of sticks to itself, but it's not too sticky to work with. It doesn't really stick to your hands that much. So it's actually really fun to work with, and it makes that fun sound. I realize now this is a pretty good project for someone that is able to make this sort of kind of advanced armature, but also doesn't have clay or doesn't want to use clay. It can be, you know, made the entire mini without any clay at all. So I think that's pretty cool and makes it kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily really beginner friendly because of the armature being kind of advanced, but it definitely is very affordable. And, you know, if you want to go head to head comparing it with a whole bunch of similar miniatures, this is like, I don't know, like less than a penny per miniature. One thing I really love about using this material is that when you pull it tight and put some tension on it, the material starts to take on a texture that looks a little bit like a linen-y kind of gauzy type cloth, which is why it works so well for making these cloaked figures. And I think what's really cool too is that as you tear it and pull tension on it, you can kind of make little curls and things in the cloaks, which you'll see me doing more of later, and it really helps bring out that kind of cartoony or even like just magical sort of floating effect that I'm trying to go for here. I think with each of these miniatures, I kind of got to a point where it was a trust the process moment where it starts to look kind of crappy. It starts to look like a paperclip with some tape wrapped around it and not a scary Dementor. So that was something that I was trying to kind of work through, and I think that they do end up looking relatively cool, but you can stay tuned and be the judge of that. I came up with this little modification to the armature where I would make a little extra hook coming off the back of the head of the armature so that basically it can give some structural support to the back of the hood and keep it upright, because I mean, really this stuff is just tape, so it wouldn't be very structurally sound, and I feel like it might break a little bit or might get like, you know, like crinkled and stuff. So this armature piece kind of helps that ensure that it stays up, but also still looks like cloth. Now you guys are kind of getting a taste of those little squiggly, swirly pieces of tape, and dang, I think they look sick. Like, I feel like they work really well for doing the thing that I've always thought was cool about the concept art of the Dementors, and even they kind of do it in the movies too, where it's like that floating, wispy kind of shreds of cloth, and this tape is perfect for it because it's so lightweight. It's not like green stuff where it's a little bit heavier, and doing that would throw off the balance of the piece. It's just all the weight is in the armature, so these little wispy bits kind of stay put, and then, you know, once they're primed and glued, I'm hoping that they'll just stay like that. I'm realizing now as I like watch back through the video to make the voiceover that I show my little wooden billboard thing of my subscribe to the channel like a million times, but it's because I don't want to be one of those people who constantly tells you audibly, subscribe to my channel, subscribe, and it's like, that always pisses me off as a viewer. But also, I like the little billboard thing, and I haven't seen anyone else ever do that, so it kind of feels like a little unique aspect of my channel as opposed to others. But part of the reason why I show it so often is because on the analytics side, it looks like most people only watch my videos for like 5% or 10% of the actual thing. I think they just click through to the end. So if I show it more times, most people will still only end up seeing it maybe one time. Here comes Rocket trying to see what I'm doing. Oh, those wispy bits of the cloak are looking so good. So here I'm showing how I made that little addition to the top of the armature off the head, the little hook that holds up the hood. And doing that really made me think of that guy, Phineas Gage. I don't know if anyone ever heard that story about the railway worker who had well, it's a long story. One thing my cats love to do is as soon as I get up from whatever chair I'm sitting in, they will appear, they will materialize and jump into the chair. I don't even see them beforehand, but as soon as I get up, there they are. Alright, so I finished all 5 of the Dementors, and I feel like they look sick. They're very cool. I'm really happy with how they came out. The only things that I'm questioning at this point are, 1, should I prime them? Yes or no? And 2, I kind of gave them hoods because I remembered in my head that they were hooded. And it's possible that I had like confounded those memories with the ring wraiths from Lord of the Rings. And I had just watched the movie too, but I thought that they had hoods. But most of the concept art shows that they have cloth tightly wrapped around their face, but they don't actually wear hoods. And I gave all these guys hoods that I think came out really, really cool. So my thought is I will probably remove the hoods of like 2 of them and leave the rest. I want at least 1 or 2 to look just like they look in the movies if possible, or very similar. But anyway, yeah, the scale I think came out great. Like this is a mini, this is like a halfling or like a human child size. Dude, these guys are sick. This came out way better than I was even expecting. At this point I was trying to decide, do I want to seal them in with just a spray primer, or do I want to seal it all together with Mod Podge? And whenever I'm in a quandary of one option over another and I've got more than one miniature to work with, then I always do a couple of each or one of each. And I found that that's also valuable in the terms of creating a video, because not everyone that watches that might want to replicate this has primer. That's a spray paint, and not everyone might have Mod Podge, but most people probably have one or the other if they are regular crafters. Anyone who's watched my earlier videos knows that I always dry my minis that have been primed in between the screen and the glass window. I'm going back to this 100 pack of these plastic counting chips as my bases, and I really hope I finish it someday. I wanted a couple of the Dementors to appear as though they're levitating or flying, and in order to do this, I used these things called serum cups, which, long story short, I had this crazy job where I was running a laboratory on an overnight shift for this hospital that was in a bad place. Anyway, they had tons of little supplies like this, so anytime something would fall on the ground, it was no longer sterile, so I would put it in my pocket and then save it in my box of crafting materials, and now it's coming in handy. Whenever I'd pull on it like this and like grab it from an angle and kind of tear it a little bit, it would make that spiral swirl thing that I really enjoy. So as for painting goes, I wanted to keep it bare bones. All I did was really 2 steps. One, I put a pale light gray for the fingers to kind of make them look a little bit closer to a skeleton. And then I also wanted to do just a kind of a dark gray graphite color dry brushing at the high points of the cloak, just to give it a little bit more detail, but I was trying to be careful not to do anything that would mess it up, because I was already really happy with how these minis looked. I really enjoyed batching these miniatures. Like, I made 5 at a time, and doing that, I think just, I don't know, I could get into a really good flow. It's super relaxing to me because nothing has to be perfect, nothing has to really be precise. I'm kind of just wrapping it and seeing how it goes. If it doesn't look right, you could just rip it off, and now you're adding texture, and then you just put on more tape, and if something really doesn't look good, you could just tape over it and keep going. I found the process extremely forgiving. I'm really happy with how these miniatures came out, and I would love to hear what you guys think. Would you ever make a miniature like this, and does it seem like it'd be too difficult to do so, or does it seem like something that you could accomplish? For me, having quite a lot of experience making paperclip armatures and armatures out of other kinds of wire, I think each one probably took, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes or so. This part's a little corny, but I wanted to show this little train that I found that says North Pole Express, because I love that scene in Harry Potter when the train stops and the Dementors come on board. Oh man, that was so cool. I'm not sure these miniatures came out looking a lot like the Dementors from the movie, but in that really cool animated part of the Harry Potter movie when they show the Deathly Hallows, I love that part, and I feel like the minis kind of look similar to that, which I'm really happy with. Thank you guys so much for your kind comments. I really appreciate it, and I think this goes the longest way towards motivating me to keep doing this thing that, you know, doesn't have any sort of financial benefit, but has a lot of benefit to my mental health and just makes me super happy. So thank you for supporting this, and I'm going to keep making as much content as I can make the time to make. Dementor!